Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I was 200 miles off the continental shelf when the first sign of the emergency crawled across our satellite terminal. It wasn't a headline, not at first, just a system notification banner that said there were intermittent disruptions to coastal communications and to keep radios on Channel 16 for essential traffic. We were a salvage outfit on day 3 of a lift and clear operation, and on any other job I would have ignored the banner. Offshore, weather and steel are the only two things that decide your schedule, and my world shrank to both the second I locked my Kirby Morgan helmet onto the ring of my neck dam and felt the tender snug the yoke. We were riding the swell on a converted anchor-handling tug, 240 feet from bow to stern, a heavy A-frame on the aft deck, a hydraulic crane forward, and a launch and recovery system cradle bolted starboard for a small work-class ROV. We worked under a charter with an insurer that wanted a thorough inventory from a sunken feeder cargo ship sitting in 260 feet of water at the edge of the outer shelf. The casualty had gone down clean, no fire, no oil release, just a fast list and a capsize during a winter blow. The plan was straightforward. Confirm structural condition, catalog container IDs, and recover any high-priority freight the client flagged. The vessel's AIS was dark, the hull resting on her starboard rail, and the stack of boxes looked like a slumped skyline in bad weather. I'm a surface-supplied diver. That means everything about my life underwater runs through an umbilical. Gas, hot water, comms, pneumoline, video, fed by my team. The supervisor on the panel, the standby divers suited and ready, the tender keeping that umbilical paid out so it floats just right and never snags. My day starts with checklists. We are ritualistic because the ocean is patient and it waits for mistakes. Pre-breathe the mix. Positive pressure test. Bailout open. Comm check with the supervisor. Camera and light on. Wrist slate strapped. Pneumo reading matches depth. Knife strapped to leg, spare cutter on harness. The supervisor, Eva, had a voice like a metronome and a habit of writing times in my ear. Copy, video good, helmet cam recording. You are clear to water at 9:12 a.m. The water was green, fading to blue at 30 feet, then a uniform dim as I dropped past a thermocline. The hot water hose in the umbilical kept my suit from chilling out. A slow river of warmth along my spine and legs. Below, the wreck grew out of the darkness like a hillside of corrugated steel. Containers crushed and peeled. Twist locks bent like paper clips. Current ran 0.3 knots west to east, livable, but it tugged at my spool line and made every move a negotiation. I checked my gauge board clipped to my chest. Depth stabilized at 257 feet. Nitrox at the panel, a conservative partial pressure, no pushing limits. Decompression plan already built if I ended up spending long minutes perched in a place the panel couldn't see. Diver, supervisor, you're at the target bay, Eva said. Her tone never changed, not for weather or weirdness. We have a match on the manifest. One sealed container with a restricted documentation. Client tag 66 Bravo. It's aft of your position by 10 meters, port side 3 high. You'll see the CSC plate with a recent inspection stamp. Make a visual, then prep to cut the locking rods. Copy, moving aft. I've got a lot of crumple here, I said. My light caught the reflective numbers on container doors. Here's 66 Bravo. Doors are inward bow, locks intact. Sample plate shows a November inspection. There's an external placard, no hazard diamond, just a federal chain of custody tag under a plastic cover. We see chain of custody tags sometimes. Pharmaceuticals, bonded evidence, high-value shipments traveling under guard. The odd part was where this ship went down, far enough offshore that it usually only carried low-risk cargo: auto parts, bulk plastics, machinery parts. I clipped my line to a secure point, anchored my fins against the lower corner casting, and thumbed the call button under my chin. I'm going to start on the locking cams. Request hot stab for the hydraulic shears. Approved, Ava said. Hydraulic pressure is live. Watch your fingers. The shears hummed when they bit steel. I cut the security seal, removed the keeper pins, then cut the bottom locking cams. The top set sat under a folded door overhang, so I moved slow, eyes on my umbilical and bailout hose to keep them clear. The door gave a little when I pried, not enough to open at depth, but enough to confirm I would get a reaction topside. We try not to open containers underwater unless we absolutely have to. Water erases forensic value, and it turns a sealed space into a silt storm. For a sealed container, we rig and lift to the deck's work zone and open it with cameras rolling, evidence table set, gloves, tarps, and a manifest clerk with a tablet. Insurance companies like ceremony when money is on the line. I rigged the slings. 2-inch webbing, choke on the top corner castings, belts doubled, master link on the crane hook. Rigging secured, I said. Each step in the order we always use. Doors tied, no interference with lashings. Umbilical clear, I'm ready for lift to take a strain. Copy, Ava said. We have the crane in position. Anticipate some movement, stay clear of pinch points. The sling took weight like a breath, then the entire door stack shifted, groaning through the water column. I tucked into the container's lee while the A-frame operator trimmed the angle and the crane took slow, precise inches. The container rose, a heavy silhouette rising against silt. When I was sure the load didn't want me, I swam clear, reeled in my spool, and followed the umbilical tail to my route back to the stage. Load is clear, I'm heading to the bell. The deck crew took the container onto the cradle like they'd practiced it in a simulator. Tag lines, drift pins, wedges, lash. I broke water into wind and noise. The Lars cradle lifted me. The tender leaned in to pull my weight with the harness handle, and the world shrank to cold air and the familiar clunk of the helmet unlock. My face felt raw in the breeze. Steam rose from my suit where the hot water bled out. On deck, the quarantine routine started by itself. We had a forward hold we used for staging recovered items. A room lined with tarps, spill kits, and lighting rigged to waterproof connectors. A camera on a tripod watched from a corner, unblinking, audio rolling. The container's doors were unbanded, and our manifest clerk, Jonah, read from the tablet. Client request: document contents with uninterrupted video. If inner packaging is sealed, do not breach. Tag and hold. Copy? Copy, the captain said. He was a compact man with a gunmetal beard and a way of standing that made other people stand straighter. He looked at the federal tag under the plastic cover on the door. An evidence chain sheet with barcode, Department of Health and Human Services in small type, and an origin field that was blank. We'll do this by the book. We loosed the cams and swung the doors. Inside was a second container, smaller, white, form-fitted into a steel frame with shock mounts. It looked like a lab freezer on a roughneck's budget. Someone had taken pains to float it in foam and strap it so nothing touched metal. A vacuum line sat under a protective cap, the indicator window showing negative pressure intact. There were no hazard diamonds. Nothing you see on chemicals or biologicals, just another chain of custody tag and a QR code. Jonah held the tablet near it. The app didn't know what to do. No match, he said. No manifest entry. It's a black box to the client. The crane swung, the box settled into the forward hold, and 4 pairs of gloved hands steadied it. Then the sea reminded us we do not operate in a warehouse. A swell rolled under our stern. The deck listed. The crane line pinged. The inner box flexed against its frame, and this small, intimate sound overrode the diesel in the wind. The sound of a seal shifting. It exhaled. If you have worked in labs or refrigeration, you know the sound. A low rush of air equalizing when a seal bleeds. It should have been nothing, but the sound made 3 men glance at each other, and our medic, Ray, stepped closer, notepad out of habit. He was a former Navy corpsman who carried calm like a tool. "Hold," the captain said. "Jonah, get a timestamp. We have an unexpected equalization. Record all actions." The manifest clerk read the time into the microphone. I watched the vacuum indicator settle. It didn't bottom out, but it dipped more than you see on a warm cap. The captain evaluated risk in seconds and decided to control variables. "We're going to sample the air inside the forward hold and inside this box before we do anything else. No breaching until we have a baseline." We had gear for that. Ray cracked open a case with a handheld air monitor, multi-gas, volatile organic readouts, oxygen percentage. He clipped a sample hose to the box's port, bled a little, then read the screen. Nothing out of range. "It looks like air," he said. "No alarm. We're not going to leave it open, though. Captain?" The captain nodded once. We proceed with caution. Open the inner box with camera coverage. No one leans in. If there's an inner seal, we do not breach. I don't scare easily, not in the ocean, not with steel. But the feeling of being watched crept in the way it sometimes does underwater when you know a big shape is moving outside your light. We unlatched the inner lid. There was a hiss, small, almost polite. Cold air steeled the back of my hands through the gloves. Inside, under plastic and foam, lay a wrapped human body. A transport shroud, medical grade, zippered down the middle, tagged at the ankle like a specimen bag. It was not the heavy black bag used by coroners. It was white, with desiccant packs taped at intervals, and a shock logger clipped to the zipper tab like a luggage tag. The federal chain of custody label on the shroud carried the same department header, and under status, a thermal range and handling notes. The name field said unknown. "Jonah," the captain said. "Record the exact wording. Copy. Handling notes maintained between 34 degrees Fahrenheit and 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Avoid mechanical stress. No resuscitation. Contact number." He stopped. The number field was blank. "There's no contact number." "Then we close it back up and call this in," the captain said, professional and a little tired. "No more action until we talk to the client and the Coast Guard. Ray, tape the port, log the vacuum indicator, and we'll secure the hold." Before anyone could move, something subtle changed in the air. I can't parse it better than that. There's a tone to a compartment when a body breathes. Most divers know it from their own lungs. You can feel pressure in your ears, the barely there movement on skin and hair. The shroud shifted under its own weight, very slightly, and the shock logger on the zipper flickered. The human brain holds a lot of templates for what is and isn't normal. This wasn't normal. I was closest, crouched to grab the corner of a strap. The shroud rose at the midsection like someone drawing a breath. "Back out," Ray said very calmly. He picked up a fire extinguisher, the CO2 type we use near the generator room, and held it ready, not as a weapon, but as insurance. The captain stepped between the crane and us to keep the hook clear and the line free. The shroud moved again, this time with a slow, controlled stretch. No jerking, no sudden lunge. The zipper teeth quivered. Ray put the extinguisher between himself and the bag, his other hand up like a traffic cop. "Hold position. No one rushes in. If this is a mistagged medical transport, we do not want a person waking up to 6 people standing over them. We all wanted it to be something normal, a mix-up. A cold sleep transport, a mishandled load, but the chain of custody said otherwise, and the way the shape under the plastic was breathing felt wrong. Every inhale was too deep, too even, like a machine testing a lung. "Forward hold to bridge," the captain said into his lapel mic. "Lock the forward hatch. No personnel unless I clear it. Prepare to call Coast Guard sector with a priority." The shroud rustled. A hand shape pressed from inside, palm down, fingers separated, probing the zipper like it could sense the teeth. I saw the outline of fingernails. The angle of the wrist was off, as if strength moved in a way it shouldn't. "Ray," the captain said. "I see it," Ray said. He didn't want to spray a person with CO2, and I didn't want him to either. Our rules are built around making sure we don't worsen anything. Everyone take a step back, hands clear. The zipper slid down half an inch on its own. Then again, the line of it curved like a smile. And that is as close as I will come to using a metaphor because there's no other way to say it. The hand came out, not darting, but steady, and the fingers latched onto the steel frame of the inner box with a pressure I could hear. The grip didn't look like someone waking up reaching for help. It looked like a clamp. "Back," the captain barked, and we moved. The hand tightened and slid, taking skin if there had been exposed skin to take. Jonah lost his footing as the deck rolled, and the hand pivoted. There was no leap, no cinematic lunge. The shape inside sat upright with a motion that didn't match anyone fighting a rap. It braced at the shoulders, flexed, and the zipper opened with a tearing sound like fabric under load. It inhaled. You could hear it. Not a gasp. A pressure change, a sound that made my ears click. Our deckhand, with the habit of being the first to steady a load, reached out with a reflex he'd used 1,000 times on moving gear. The hand latched onto his forearm through his jacket and pinned it against the frame. He didn't cry out the way you'd expect because his breath left him too fast, like someone had squeezed his ribcage. Ray triggered the extinguisher, a white roar of CO2 that filled the forward hold and turned everything into a frost-edged fog. "Out! Out!" the captain said. "Seal the hatch." Another deckhand grabbed the first guy under the armpits and hauled him back. His sleeve was dented by finger marks that looked like someone had clamped a vise on him. The fabric wasn't torn. The pressure had left clean, deep impressions. The kind you see when a hydraulic tool bites and releases. He swayed, pale, and Ray planted him on a bench and pushed his jacket back to check for skin breaks. "You with me?" Ray asked. "Focus right here." The man nodded, dazed. His pupils were wide. His forearm had a set of crushed-looking bruises that were rising fast, not a clean tear or cut. Ray looked at me, and then the captain with the kind of face you make when only half of your training applies. "No laceration I can see," he said. "He's going to stiffen up. He needs rest, and we need to keep him warm. Keep him still. Captain, we have to seal that inner box now." We didn't go near it again. The shape inside exhaled once more, and the vacuum indicator bled down toward neutral. We backed out, pulled the door closed, and dogged the hatch to the forward hold. The captain set a guard outside with the radio and posted the standby diver as extra eyes. He didn't go for heroics, and that's the only reason I'm here to tell this. "Ray, watch our injured crewman," he said. "Jonah, document everything. Ava, I want you on the radios and the sat phone." I went to the dive control shack, still in my suit, helmet off, gloves on. The supervisor's panel hummed with fans. The satellite terminal screen showed an amber icon next to Coast Guard. Ava was already working through the GMDSS options. She sent a DSC priority to any Coast Guard unit within reach and hit the sat phone. It connected and then dropped. She tried again. The radio came back with something I had never heard in my career. An automated voice reading a standardized message that referenced an ongoing national emergency. It asked mariners to restrict traffic to distress, safety, and medical calls, to stay clear of specified areas, and to expect limited Coast Guard response due to high operational tempo. It did not say why. It did not mention weather. "Bridge panel," Ava said on intercom. "Coast Guard is automated. I can try sector direct." The captain's voice came back from the bridge speaker, calm but edged. "Keep trying. Log every call and time. We hold position and we quarantine the forward hold. Weather is a schedule that doesn't negotiate, and by lunch the wind had built. Swells went from 4 feet to 8, marching from the northwest. The forecast window narrowed on the screen, 2 to 3 hours before the perimeter of a fast-moving low pressed in. The captain had to choose between cutting loose and running for port or riding it out on station to finish the survey. We had a third choice now: to keep a lid on our forward hold and hope the person we had half seen stayed wherever the chain of custody wanted them kept. "Where did this load come from?" I asked Jonah after I got my gloves off. He was the kind of man who wrote down the obvious because details go missing when you think they're too obvious to write. He showed me the manifest, his finger tapping the line that marked 66 Bravo. There was an origin field, but someone had scrubbed it in the client copy. "It's blank all the way back," he said. "Routing codes instead of ports. That's not unheard of for bonded shipments, but this?" He shook his head. We rechecked our physical measures. The forward hold had a beefy hatch with the dogs that snugged tight even in a blow. We ran a strip of yellow tape across the wheel, not because tape holds steel, but because my brain calms down when it sees something we can break if someone opens it without permission. We put a camera in the passage aimed at the hatch, motion sensitive, and set an audio record. Ray sat with the injured deckhand in the mess, checking his pulse and temperature every few minutes. "No fever," he said. "He's tired and shocky. Let's keep fluids in him. If he spikes a temperature, I want to know immediately." The captain met me outside the dive shack. We both looked like we hadn't blinked in an hour. "I need you back in the water," he said. "I want a quick check on the ballast compartments on the casualty's port side. There was a noise, metal on metal, when we were lifting. I don't want a surprise if something shifts when the weather pops." It was the right call. Weather wins, but it shouldn't surprise you, not at depth. I suited again. The standby diver, Malik, helped me reseat the neck ring and check the O-ring. Gloved fingers methodical. Ava tested the comms. "Diver, supervisor, video's good, gas is good. You are clear to water at 1:03 p.m. The ocean had gone a shade darker. The sunlight felt like an idea instead of a fact. I fell through it until the temperature on my wrist slate ticked down 2 degrees and the wreck came into view again. The current had strengthened, 0.6 knots, and gusting like wind in a city canyon between broken containers. I kept a firm hand on the umbilical and went slow. "At the casualty," I said, moving to the port ballast vents. "Copy," Ava said. "We've got you in the light. No traffic on radar, you are clear." The sideshell plating on the port ballast tanks looked like a freezer door someone had kicked in. A seam had opened along a weld and the water inside spoke to the sea outside with a low clank. A check valve knocking. "I hear it," I said. "It's not structural collapse, it's a valve. I'm going to test it with the pry." I levered a bar against the floating mesh guarding the vent and shifted it. The 3-inch valve inside clinked and settled. The sound stopped. "Resolved," I said. Sound was the valve knocking in the surge. "Copy," Ava said. "Anything else?" I hung there a moment, light on a scuffed stripe of paint. Something brushed my fin. A length of ribbon cable peeled away like seaweed, and I laughed at myself for reacting to trash. Then the camera picked up motion inside a broken louver. Small, fast, like a fish turning in a culvert. I aimed my light and saw a movement you do not expect in a ballast compartment at depth. A handprint smeared in silt on the inside of the louver. Not a fresh one, not crisp, but hand-shaped enough that my neck got tight. "Supervisor," I said, careful with the words, "I'm seeing a hand mark on the inside of a port vent. Could be from a crewman during the sinking or during a previous dive. It's odd." Ava didn't answer right away. The radio clicked. "Copy," she said finally. "Document. Do not put your hand inside. We're getting power chatter topside." "Say again?" "Generator is surging under load. We're switching to the secondary. Keep your head on a swivel." Power flutters turn a steel ship into a haunted house. Lights hiccup. Fans stutter. The thrusters on dynamic positioning trim and overtrim, trying to keep the bow to the swell. I moved to a point where the wreck lee blocked the current and stood by while Ava and the engineer went through the transfer. The panel hummed. Then the comms fuzzed, not with a loss of carrier but with a noise on the line, a waveform you get when something starts emitting on a frequency it shouldn't. It made the hair in my ears feel like they wanted to cramp. "Ava, I'm getting noise," I said. "Copy, we have it too. Hold your position. The captain is—" The comm cut, not dead, but crowded by a burst of automatic audio from the bridge set. The automated voice again, louder, now reading an expanded notice. "Due to a national emergency, maritime facilities and vessels should be prepared for reduced services. If you are experiencing a medical emergency, do not attempt to reach shore without coordination." The wreck creaked, or my nerves did. I filmed the ballast vent for 30 long seconds, added a sweep of the shell plating for context, then called my ascent. "I have what you need, Supervisor. Request recovery before this gets messy." "Approved," Ava said, and I loved the way her voice stayed the same. "Make your way to the stage. Watch your umbilical." I rose along the line of my rope, past crushed corners and twisted locking claws that looked like open mouths. Above, the surface churned white. The Lars cradle dipped like a swing. I timed my reach for the stirrup and rode the lift, water pouring from my suit. On deck, the engineer had the generator room open, and the secondary breaker looked warmer than it should. The smell of hot varnish didn't make anyone feel better. The captain came down from the bridge with a face like a chart plotter in red mode. "We've got a wider problem," he said. "Coast Guard is automated. Sector can't answer or won't. I have a National Security Council feed telling maritime operators to reduce port calls and wait for guidance." He breathed once, like he was doing his own equalization, and our injured hand is getting worse. Ray stood in the mess with a thermometer and a blood pressure cuff. The crewman he was tending had gone from tired to noticeably ill. His skin had the dull, waxy look of a man who worked too hard in the sun, and his eyes didn't like the light. His temperature went from normal to elevated in under an hour, Ray said. "It's not a spike like a heat injury, it's a steady climb." He's also reporting pressure in his jaw and forearm. No visible breaks in skin. No bleeding. But the indentations have darkened fast. I want him in a quiet cabin with lights low, fluids, and I want someone with him at all times. The captain nodded. "Done." He looked at me. "You saw that hand mark?" I nodded. "Inside a vent, could be old, it could be nothing. Or it could be everything," he said. "Keep that helmet cam rolling whenever you are anywhere near the forward hold. Jonah, you document those indentations like they're evidence. Ava, we go to a watch rotation. Everyone else, no one opens that hatch. Clear?" You do not need to tell working sailors twice when the ocean has given a warning. We split into teams. I took the first watch with Malik outside the forward hold. We sat on folding chairs in the passageway with the camera, watching the hatch wheel. We listened to the engine load rise and fall, and the hiss-stutter of the CO2 extinguishers we had staged nearby in case something inside needed a fog we could make. We also staged 2 welding sets, oxyacetylene and a MIG running off a portable generator, with the torch tips taped to prevent accidental sparks. We didn't plan to weld a person, but a leave-in place arc can cut hinges if you have to. Planning around doors is what we do. At 3:15 p.m., the power surged hard enough to pop the lights for half a second. The emergency strip runners kicked in, low and green along the deck, smearing the hallway in a shipboard version of night vision. The camera's auto iris did a dance, and the motion sensor pinged once. The hatch didn't move. The deck rolled and the hinge creaked, and somewhere down the hall, a tool fell and clanked once. "Copy that power cycle," Ava's voice said in our earwigs. "We are stable on secondary. If we lose it, we go dark for a bit. Stay put." In the quiet after the lights settled, we heard a sound from the other side of the hatch that did not match any ship noise. It wasn't banging, not a demand to be let out. It was a long, slow exhale, then silence, then a shallow inhale. I could feel it more than hear it, my eardrums moving like they do when you walk down a pressurized hallway in a hospital. Malik looked at me and raised his eyebrows in a question. I shook my head. We didn't announce it on the radio, we just noted the time in our logs. At 3:48 p.m., the injured deckhand's watcher called from the cabins. "Ray, he's sweating. He says his teeth hurt. That's not a symptom you plan around." And Ray jogged past with a kit. The captain followed. The boat rolled harder now. Wind swiveled around to slap us on the starboard beam, and the autopilot chased the waves. I could feel the captain stacking decisions in his head like shipping containers. Weather, power, communications, a sealed box with something in it that breathed wrong, and a sick man with no obvious wound. The radio snapped to life with a voice that wasn't automated, a human voice, doubled with static from a distant repeater. All stations, this is Coast Guard sector." The relief in the mess corridor was like fingers lifting off a pressure band. "If you are outside the 20-mile line, maintain position. Expect delays in response due to conditions on shore. Report any medical emergencies with symptoms, including sudden changes in behavior, severe jaw pressure, or respiratory irregularities. Do not, repeat, do not, transport patients to shore without coordination." Severe jaw pressure. It fit too neatly, and I didn't like how that felt. The captain returned from the cabins with a decision writ across his shoulders. He looked 5 years older than he had at dawn. "We're sheltering in place through the front," he said, eyes on a weather plot we couldn't see. "When the weather allows, we either scuttle that inner box or we take it to a port with law enforcement and medical support ready. I'm not going to become the operator who smuggled a problem into a harbor because it was convenient." He didn't get to pick which of those 2 choices to execute right away. The generator surged again, the deck lights flickered, and the emergency runners came on for the second time. The corridor felt like a stage lit for an evacuation demonstration. The camera, aimed at the hatch, picked up a change in the lines of the door. Not a churn or a sway, but a deformation in the center, like pressure from the other side. Without words, Malik and I each put a hand on the wheel to feel if it was turning. It wasn't, but it was warmer than it should have been. Like the room on the other side had climbed a few degrees. "Captain," I said on the net, voice even because panic on a radio multiplies. "We're seeing pressure on the forward hold hatch, no movement of the wheel. Temperature feels elevated." "Copy," he said. "I am en route. Ray is with the patient. Ava has the panel." He came at a fast walk. He didn't apologize for brushing past. He put his hand on the hatch, then his ear. He heard what we had heard, then looked at the camera, then at us. "We are not going in," he said. "We wait. If we lose that hatch, we fall back to the bulkhead and we vent the compartment with the forefan to the outside. Welders, you're on the hinges if it comes to it. Extinguishers first for visibility and temperature." We all nodded, not because this was a speech, but because agreeing out loud makes action smoother when action is needed. The boat dipped. Something heavy slid and thumped forward of the bulkhead. The sound had weight. So did the silence after. At 4:22 p.m., the injured deckhand stood up in his cabin without permission from his own legs and walked shirtless into the corridor like someone moving in their sleep. His eyes were open too wide. Ray tried to guide him back to the bunk with his hands open and patient like he would with anyone disoriented. The deckhand didn't resist the touch, but when Ray steered him, his head cocked to the side as if listening for a deeper signal. He breathed and paused, at a rhythm that made my ears itch, then made a noise that lived between a sigh and a chest pop. "Let's get him back to bed," Ray said evenly. "No restraint, everyone give him space." He looked at the captain. "I don't like this." "No one does," the captain said. "But we are not going to hurt him." He glanced toward the forward hold as if the two issues had conspired to land on the same ledger line. We had designed our ship for steel problems, not medical ones. We could weld a torn hinge in a sea state. We could lift a container with a bar-taut line. We could drop a diver into current and pull them out, but we were not a floating clinic. The captain knew our limits. He also knew our tools. "Ava, bring the panel battery lights online in case we lose mains. I don't want us in the dark. Malik, take the port side extinguisher. Diver," he said, meaning me even off my helmet. "Take the starboard one. If we have to open that hatch, I want a whiteout first." We didn't open it. It opened a little for us. The wheel didn't move. The dogs held. But a hiss came through a gap around the seal where the door plate flexed against a slightly bent frame. It was a tone, not a draft. A sound that spoke pressure from the wrong side. My brain cataloged it the way it catalogs leaks underwater. Not dangerous until it is, then very. The captain went to the bridge and returned with a short, old-fashioned thing I had never seen him carry on a job, a flare pistol. Not to shoot anyone, never that, but to make light in the event the deck went black and we needed to see one big picture. He clipped it to his belt, set his jaw, and said the part none of us wanted to hear. "We are going to make a plan for both outcomes. Outcome 1, we hold this hatch, ride out the weather, and we run for port with a sick man and a sealed box. Outcome 2, we cannot hold this hatch. If that happens, we do not rush. We control the space. We use extinguishers to knock temperature and visibility. Welders, you cut if we need to move the door off its hinges. If anyone sees anything that looks like a person in distress, we do not engage physically. We use shields and gentle control. No one goes alone. And whatever happens, the helmet cam and every security camera stays rolling." The storm arrived like an overdue bill. The motion increased from a steady roll to a chaotic, cross-hatched set of movements that made walking a mindful act. Spray flung across the deck and misted the passageway through seams. The captain announced that we were committed. No run for port until the map mentioned us with lighter colors. We strapped cabinets shut, bungeed tools, and wedged doors. The generator complained. The secondary power held, and the emergency runners glowed like ghost rails down the hall. At 5:07 p.m., the motion sensor on the forward hold camera pinged again. The hatch plate bulged, then snapped back. The wheel spun 1 degree under its own weight and then stopped. From the other side came a sound of something scraping along the deck inside. Slow, deliberate, as if learning friction. No banging. No shouted words either. Just that slow re-education in how to move under gravity. Ray's face changed in a way that reminded me he'd been in rooms with injured people who didn't know they were injured. "Captain," I said, "you need to choose now." He didn't snap. He didn't waste time. He looked at the hatch, then at the weather plot on the tablet, then at Ray. He measured a man's life and the lives of my crew and whatever duty we had to the tag and the chain of custody and law. He looked back at me. "Get your suit," he said. "If we have to scuttle the inner box, I want your hands on the hardware. If we run for port, I want your camera evidence intact in case someone asks why we did what we did." I sprinted to the deck locker. The tender was already there because he knew a choice like that would always require a diver. I got back into the comfort of systems and checklists. Helmet seal seated, bailout bottle open, comms live, chest camera mounted on the harness bracket. The helmet cam rolls as long as I breathe. It sees what I see and more when I forget to look. In the right conditions, that camera becomes the only honest witness to the worst days of a job. "Diver, supervisor," Ava said, "comms are good. Gas is good. The ROV team is spooling up in case we need to get eyes under the hull. We will not launch in this sea unless we have to. Your objective is the forward hold from the exterior. There's a blowout panel on the port side we can free with the crane if we decide to send it to the bottom." The captain met me at the aft deck and walked with me to the bow like we were heading to a meeting. He stood at the forward hatch, hand on the wheel, and breathed once like he was equalizing at depth. "This is not a decision I get to rehearse," he said, "but I'm not going to let whatever is in there decide for us. We will either contain it or discard it. No third option." Behind him, the injured deckhand sat in the corridor with Ray, head down, breathing at that measured rhythm. He looked up once and made eye contact with me. There was nothing malicious in it. He looked like a man with a headache trying to remember a word. That almost made it worse. We put a line on the portside blowout panel, a sacrificial plate designed to vent pressure from the forward hold in the event of a fire. It was not meant to pass a white box, but steel is a suggestion with enough tonnage attached. The crane hook took strain. The plate flexed and squealed. The hull trembled. "Hold," the captain said. He stood very still for a count of 3, then said, "Proceed." The plate popped off and swung on the hook like a door from an abandoned building. Spray leaped through the opening in a crosswind. The interior of the hold showed itself in a smear of fog and frost as CO2 trapped inside mixed with cold air. The white box sat where we left it, now unstrapped, rotated a fraction, as if the deck had crawled under it in the swell. The shroud lay inside the open lid. It looked like someone had risen in bed and bent the mattress. "Diver, your cable," Ava said in my ear. "Let's keep this elegant." I clipped a hook on the white box's frame and took a turn through a pad eye. The crane lifted. The box skated and then scraped toward the opening like it had magnets in its corners. It resisted, not because of weight, but because surfaces love each other when they're wet. It came free like a tooth under a patient hand. We guided it over the rail. The sea waited with its same face. "Captain," I said, "say the word." He looked at the box for a very long second as if he could see the entire world through its lid. The call that didn't pick up, the tags missing numbers, the man holding his jaw, the notice of national emergency read by a voice with no face. He closed his eyes and opened them again. "Scuttle," he said. "Log the time. Diver, release at 5:21 p.m. I thumbed the pelican hook. The sea took the box with none of the drama the movies would want. It fell and became part of a surface pattern that doesn't care about labels. We all watched the spot as if it would erupt. It didn't. The ocean recorded nothing. I felt the load leave the line through my gloves like a ghost stepping away. The forward hatch behind us thumped once. A deep thump, a note I knew from pressure tests and hydrostatic stories. The captain turned, walked to the wheel, and put his hand on it. He looked at me. "We run for port," he said. "We declare a medical. We hand over every scrap of video and logs. Everyone stays together. No one goes alone." We stripped the deck to storm condition. The engineer coaxed the generator into a mode that preferred survival over comfort. The autopilot set a course along the weather instead of against it. Crew, who had never looked for a hatch number in their careers, walked past the forward hold, now vented to open air through the missing plate, and put their hands on the steel because every person on a ship touches the ship when it's time to move. Ray walked the injured deckhand to a seat in the mess, buckled him like a passenger on a rough flight, and held a bowl in case his stomach changed its mind. "Breathing's still steady," he said. "He says his jaw pressure is worse. Still no skin breaks. We'll get him to a doctor." I went to the dive shack and pulled the micro SD card from the helmet camera, slid it into the recorder and made 3 copies. I sealed each in a plastic bag and wrote the time in thick marker. 1 went to the captain's safe. 1 I sealed into a document pouch that would go ashore with the manifest. 1 I taped to the inside of my locker and looked at twice as if looking could make it more real. It wasn't what you'd call moving on, it was layering. We hit the shelf edge and the swell calmed just enough to make coffee a possibility. Ava called Sector again and got the automated voice once more. She called the insurer and got a voicemail with a number for emergencies that sent her back to the same loop. She called a private medical service that often serviced rigs and got a human who sounded very tired, who took every detail and said someone would meet us at the pilot station if weather allowed. No one promised anything. I respected that more than an empty guarantee. By 7:40 p.m., the sky had turned a hard, stainless color. Shipboard time is elastic in weather. Minutes stretch and then collapse. We saw an orange flash on the horizon that wasn't lightning and realized it was a flare from another vessel riding out the same line. Our AIS showed them as a fishing trawler with a name I didn't recognize. Their radio call slid in under static. Taking water in the lazarette. Pumps holding. Any vessel in vicinity. The captain gave our position, speed, and said the thing you never want to say but might have to. We could not divert safely. We were already carrying 1 patient and an unspoken thing. In the forward hold, the opening we had made with the crane breathed like a lung. Not constantly, not with drama. Just a slow in and out that my body assigned to the sea until I decided it couldn't just be that. We had vented the inner air. We had scuttled the box, and something behind the hatch remained that had learned a room and was now relearning the weather. I did not open that hatch, I'm telling you the truth. I did not go closer because I have spent a life learning when proximity solves a problem and when it starts a new one. This was not my problem to solve with the tools I had. It would be someone else's with better suits and bigger warnings. We made the 20-mile line near midnight, though none of us used that word because we measured time in watch changes and generator noises. The pilot station reported that the harbor was limiting entries due to public health measures. That phrase made the hair on my arms lift. We were told to hold at a designated waypoint and wait for an escort. The captain acknowledged like a man being handed an envelope at a ceremony. Ray took the injured deckhand's temperature again. It had crept up and then eased, then crept. He looked comfortable in a way that worried me more than discomfort would have. He breathed deep and even, and when Ray asked him to describe his pain, he pointed to his jaw and then to his forearm with 2 careful taps. The escort came into view as a pair of cutters riding the swell like it owed them money. They turned in front of our bow and set a speed we could match without breaking anything. A voice from one of them told us to maintain a radio silence. Then it told us to prepare for a boarding. The captain nodded to no one and had us all put on work vests. "Eyes on each other," he said. "Everything we have goes to them. Helmet cam, manifest, logs. If anyone asks a question, answer it plainly. Do not elaborate, do not speculate, and no one opens the forward hold." I carried one of the copies of the helmet cam video like an organ in a cooler. The boarding team came aboard in calm, clean motions. They looked like medical technicians wearing Coast Guard colors. They moved like they had practiced moving on ships that moved. They asked for Ray first, then the captain, then for the diver who cut the locks. That was me. I gave them the pouch. I said the time. I said the depth. I said the chain of custody labels and the missing numbers. I said what the shroud looked like and what the hand felt like through steel. They listened without cutting me off. They did not say the word I had avoided, the one everyone thinks. You know the one. Because that word would be an adjective none of us had earned. They said patient, compartment, vent, and observe. They looked at our forward hatch and nodded like someone checking a line on a blueprint. Then they asked the captain if he wanted them to open it. He took a breath and did not spread the decision around, because he knew there weren't enough hands to carry it. "No," he said. "I want you to take our patient and our records. I want you to tell me where to go and where to stay clear. And I want you to log that I asked to scuttle a thing because I did not know what else to do." "We have that," the lead said. "We will take your patient. You will remain at anchor until instructed." He paused, and in that pause I heard the human instead of the uniform. "We will also take one copy of your video and your written logs. Keep the other copies secured. If someone other than us asks for them without a court order, you say no." They took our deckhand on a basket lift with a medic at his side. He looked at me once again and parted his lips like he wanted to say a word. He didn't. If this were a story told another way, I'd give you the word and make it a key. Life isn't a key factory. He breathed and went with them quietly. They did not siren out. They went with the steady forward motion of people who existed in a plan I didn't get to see. We waited. We cleared the decks. We logged times. We did what seamen do when the world stops being a machine and starts being a rumor. We made coffee and cleaned things that didn't need cleaning. The forward hold opened to the night air through the missing blowout panel like a wound, and the air moving in and out didn't smell like anything but salt and cold metal. If I tell you I heard breathing, you will decide whether you believe me based on what kind of person you are. I am telling you I felt pressure move in my ears like a wave you can't see. That is all. At 2:10 a.m., the cutters came back and told us to proceed to a quarantine anchorage outside the breakwater. The channel lights were lit as if nothing had changed on shore. The city glowed. There were fewer moving lights than normal, but lights are a poor indicator of life. We anchored in the assigned circle and set a watch. The captain went to his cabin and shut the door long enough to splash water on his face and change his shirt. When he came back out, he looked like the man I had met on my first contract. Upright, a little heavy around the truth, and allergic to drama. He stood by the forward hold hatch and put his hand on it one last time. Then he turned to me. "You keep that camera rolling when you walk this passage," he said. "Not because I think we'll need it, but because every now and then, the only proof we did the right thing is a video that shows what we saw. If anyone ever asks why we cut a line and let a box go, you give them the tape." I did as he asked. I walked the passage until dawn. The helmet cam recorded the same things it usually does. Steel, paint, less tidy coils than we like, men sleeping on benches with their vests on. It also recorded the forward hold hatch, closed and secured, with a wheel we had marked with yellow tape. The tape never broke. The wheel never turned. The plate never deformed again. If you listen to the audio in a quiet room with good headphones, you can hear the ship breathing in sync with the swell, and something else that might be nothing, or might be a room remembering it used to be sealed. When the sun finally came up, the city on the horizon didn't look like a city in trouble. But the radio traffic said otherwise. Words like screening and shelter and hold position. We stayed where we were told and waited for the next set of instructions. That's all ships do in the end. They wait for weather, they wait for cargo, they wait for the tide, and sometimes they wait for strangers in clean suits to come aboard with paperwork. There are stories in our trade that no one writes up because they don't end tidy. A diver is sent to look at a thing. The thing turns out to be a door, and behind the door is a room where the air weighs more than it should. You cut the hinge or you don't. You stand outside and listen, and your ears tell you something your eyes won't confirm. Then you either close it forever or open it and lose the ability to close it again. Those stories survive as fingerprints on helmets and notes in logbooks. On paper, our job report for that day is simple. We located and recovered the priority container. We discovered an inner unit with restricted documentation and a chain of custody tag. We observed unexpected movement consistent with respiration. A crewman experienced a crush-type injury without skin break. Communications from shore were limited due to a declared emergency. We quarantined the forward hold, vented the compartment to open air, and scuttled the inner unit in accordance with the captain's order. We departed station and proceeded to a quarantine anchorage under escort. We transferred one patient to authorities and provided video and logs. We secured from diving operations. There were no further incidents. But I was there when the shroud rose like a tide you couldn't see, and a gloved hand gripped a steel frame like it had never lost a step. I was there when a man developed symptoms that matched a checklist someone in a windowless room had already written and put on a radio. And I was there when a captain chose between evidence and safety and decided that no one with sense would fault him for choosing the living over an answer. Later, when the weather cleared, when our deck was dry and every tool was back in its assigned place, we stood with mugs of coffee and watched the cutout where the blowout panel had been. The engineer welded a temporary plate over it with a bead-like stitching. He ground it smooth. He painted it the color of the hull. The wind made the kind of sound in it that wind always does in new steel. We all pretended that was the only sound we heard. I don't know what came of the box. I don't know where the medical team took our deckhand or what they wrote on his chart. I don't know what the automated voice will say tomorrow or what the people behind the notice will decide. I know only what my camera saw and what my ears recorded. And I know that if anyone ever asks why we did what we did, I will show them the footage of a white shroud like a clean sheet on a hospital bed, and a hand reaching out with a grip that pressed metal like clay without tearing cloth, and the way a room breathed through a hatch in twice the rhythm of the sea. We carry our own black boxes in this trade. Mine is a card in a pouch, sealed with tape and a signature, sitting in a locker that smells like neoprene and oil. If you open it, you won't find answers. You'll find images from a day when a salvage team tried to be the grown-ups in a situation designed to make everyone feel small. You'll see procedure and restraint and an old-fashioned reluctance to call something by a name it hasn't earned yet. You'll also see a captain's final look at a hatch before he turned away to care for someone he could still help, which may be the only decision that matters when steel and weather and breath decide to meet on the same day. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.